Please welcome to the stage, Dan Pfeiffer.
All right. How do you make a regulatory panel exciting? You start with some Metallica, right? And good people. I told them I'd say that. So I've got two jobs today. I'm not going to be on the panel. My job is to introduce the topic and then introduce our moderator, who's going to introduce our panelist. I'm Dan Pfeiffer. I cover regulatory and governmental affairs for Itron. I've been in Itron about 20 years, but I started my career as a fish biologist for the Washington Water Power Company back in 1984. And as many of you know by now, our history, the Washington Water Power was the company that spawned Itron back in the mid-'70s. And the jokes don't get any better than that. But in between my time at Avista, which is now the old Washington Water Power Company, and Itron, I spent some time as a policy advisor to the president of the Idaho Utilities Commission, and that's a transition we're going to talk about today on this regulator to regulated panel. I did it the opposite way. These people did it the right way. But that transition, they're all former state commissioners that are now utility executives, and that offers a very unique perspective, being on both sides of the dais, and that's something that I think is going to be very important. But to understand that dichotomy between this side of the bench and this side, you have to look at the standard mission statement of every public utility commission in the country, blue state, red state, doesn't matter, to ensure safe, reliable, affordable utility services at just and reasonable rates. And it's at just and reasonable where you get this dichotomy of opinion between the regulated and the regulator. My second job today is to introduce Nick Wagner with Black Hills Energy. Nick is a very, very good friend of mine, and in the past when I've introduced him, it's turned into a little bit more of a roast than a tribute, but I promised my wife, who likes him very much, that I would keep it straight. But it's really hard because he provides such a target-rich opportunity. But I will give him a straight up intro. And Nick was born and raised in Gillette, Wyoming. He migrated to Iowa. He got 2 engineering degrees from the University of Iowa. He was a practicing industrial engineer for 15 years before he decided to become a politician. Got himself elected to city council, got himself elected to the House of Representatives, and then he was appointed to the Iowa Utilities Board, where I got to meet him over a decade ago, and we've been Metallica-loving, fly-fishing buddies ever since. Nick has been at one of these things before, a big picture when he was an Iowa commissioner, and he went on to become the president of NARUC, which is essentially the trade association for utility commissions, and it's a position that Congress and CNN view as the nation's top state regulator. I have seen Nick moderate dozens of panels. He is very good, very entertaining. Please help me in welcoming my brother from another mother, Nick Wagner with Black Hills. Not really.
I'm not sure how I'm supposed to take it when Dan doesn't roast me. That's not normal, so I'm not sure where this is going to go. We may have flopped already. I'm super excited to be here today. I have two what I consider very good friends. We all served, well, actually, Kevin and I missed each other by a little bit, but served with them as commissioners. We have all been advisors to each other over the years, and so we're gonna sit up here. We're gonna have a conversation. We're gonna try to avoid this whole panel thing, and we'll probably get into a good conversation because again, we're good friends. We don't get a chance to hang out like this very often, so you guys. I don't know if you guys are going to enjoy it, but I know we are. So first, I'm going to welcome up here to join us Maria Bocanegra, who is a former member of the Illinois Commerce Commission. I'm not going to go into their full bios because I'm going to let them do that because they will do a much better job.
Thank you, Nick.
Welcome. And next, we will bring Kevin Gunn to the stage, who is a former chair of the Missouri Commission. All right, well, welcome.
Thank you.
So as I mentioned, I'm going to give you guys the opportunity to introduce yourselves because you'll do a much better job. Kevin and I have already come to the conclusion that Maria is going to blow ours out of the water. So we're just, listen to hers and pretend like we had something cool going on too. But so Maria, I'll start with you.
Well, I'll keep it short, actually. Maria Bocanegra. I served on the Illinois Commerce Commission from 2019 until approximately 2022. I'm a lawyer by training, and I now am president of Peoples Gas and North Shore Gas.
Kevin.
I was on the Missouri Commission from 2008 to 2013, about 5 years. I am also a lawyer by trade, but also cut my teeth kind of in the political realm. So I wasn't an elected official, except for I did do a stint on the city council, but I was chief of staff for a congressman before I joined the commission.
And so I'm not sure there's been a commissioner in the country, in the history of the country, who was in middle school or grade school, and the teacher said, what do you want to do when you grow up? And said, I want to be a utilities commissioner. So how did you guys what was the sort of trigger to get you to the commission?
Can we go?
Sure, I'll start. So I took, there's really two ways to get on commissions, right? Is one being competent in the energy world, or in your field, like Maria was, or the political route, like I took. So I was chief of staff for a congressman. So I kind of was involved in politics a lot. I was on a local city council, and I was actually being recruited and started moving towards running for the state senate. And that caught the attention of the governor, who was of a different political party than I was. And they came to me and said, hey, look, we think we have a better job for you. And I had very little kids at the time, and I had a wife who is extremely much better lawyer than I am. You should Google my wife, Amy Gunn. She's a fantastic lawyer. And she had a young career as well. And so being in Jefferson City for 6 months out of the year, bound kind of by the constitutional schedule of the legislature, was not as attractive. And there were a couple things that were kind of triggering to make me do that, kind of personally and professionally. And so I took the appointment. The folks that thought I was going to run for the state senate weren't thrilled by that. The Senate, some of the Senate of my own party had some things to say about that, but got confirmed. And it turned out to be the best job that I ever took and the best decision I ever made. The ability to affect people's lives. If I'm not a guy that likes the knocking on doors, the raising money part of public policy or politics. The policy stuff that really kind of got me going. And so to be able to impact the policy, if you're regulating utilities in the state, you're affecting basically everybody's life. We did gas, water, electric, manufactured housing in Missouri. Every state has a little quirk. But if you really wanted to talk about policy, this was the place to do it. And it was a time when renewable integration was kind of just starting to ramp up. So renewable portfolio standards and things like that were being implemented in the state. And so it was a great venue to have really deep policy discussions, be involved in a great organization like NARUC, and it really, probably to this day, I consider it one of the best jobs I ever had.
Maria.
I echo that. I mean, I think it's definitely one of the best jobs I've ever had. But contrary to your very nice comment, I don't know that I had the energy background going into that role. I think I maybe had some political wherewithal when I got tapped by then Governor Pritzker, but it was a couple things for me, and I shared a little bit about this earlier, but I was a little bit calcified with the workers' comp thing, and it just so happened that Governor Rauner lost to Governor Pritzker, and so they were moving agencies around, and like Kevin, in Illinois, you are appointed, and so there's a couple things there. First of all, I don't think it was really may I? It's kind of a, hey, you're gonna go over here type of thing. It's not like you turned the governor down. So there's a little bit of that, but I think it kind of was answering just my natural inclination that I was ready to do something different. And boy, was it different. Certainly exposed me to a lot more complexity and technicality than I had been used to in doing workers' comp, but it was just sort of the stretch that my brain needed and the career change that I needed. And I definitely have found longevity in this type of industry for sure.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, I would similar to you, only nobody saved me from that legislative path. So I unfortunately ended up there for a little while. But everybody used to ask me, what does it take to be a commissioner? And it really boiled down to knowing the governor. It's kind of what I tell people. If you know the governor, you have a shot.
Single best qualification.
I think, yeah, exactly. I think that's kind of what we all saw as well, right? If the governor knows who you are or you know them, then you have a shot. So as you look at your career today versus back as a commissioner, if you could, we don't really write letters anymore. I suppose some people do, but if you could send yourself, your commissioner self, a video selfie and give them advice, what would that advice be?
I would say for me, it's listen more. And the disclaimer here being it's not a commentary on any particular commission or commissioner, but I would say for me, it's definitely listen more. I mean, it's easy to get bogged down in reading the dockets and doing the day-to-day work, but being on this side now, there's really a lot of value to trying to understand what utilities do from an operational perspective that really doesn't translate very well through filings or through litigation. And so I think we could all benefit from learning a little bit more of that 101, quite frankly.
100%. I mean, I didn't know anything about walking in about utility operation. You know, you don't really know how even electricity is generated when you come in blind like that. And I was a lawyer. I did lawyer math, right? I don't know, which is nothing. So I would have said, take a little bit more time to learn about the business aspect of utilities, what impacts earnings, what doesn't, what's important to them, why is an ROE important, or what's more important, capital structure, ROE. I had no idea about that. I mean, I was Googling terms, and I think many of you know this, it's a different language. Energy world uses a different language, everything's an acronym, and I didn't know any of that. So I would be up there on the bench, somebody would ask a question and be like, I have no idea what they're talking about. We had good staff, I had a good advisor, but taking a step back and taking a little bit of time to learn both the business aspect of it and the new language. I mean, it takes about a year to kind of get to where you feel like you kind of know what you're talking about, and then something new comes along and you don't know what you're talking about again.
Yeah, there's a lot of change, a lot of that stuff to pick up. I don't know, you guys, what would you venture to guess? The number of commissioners, there's what, 232 some commissioners across the U.S., somewhere there. What percentage do you guys think go in there with some level of knowledge of utilities?
Wow.
It's low.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely low.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to put a number on it, I would say less than half.
I'd probably put it at less than 25.
Yeah.
I had an inkling of it only because in the legislature, I served on the Commerce Committee, which once in a while we had the Utilities Board come give us a presentation. You're like, oh, okay.
I mean, there are really a couple paths to getting on commissions. You're right. I mean, political is probably the main one, and in many states they're elected. So it's definitely a political path. But there are a couple states where you have staff members that do get elevated to commissioners, or they have an application process where you get some folks with some more technical knowledge. But I think a vast majority of them just come on because they're smart, people that care about this stuff, and governor recognizes them and puts them on the commission. But now, it sounds like we're saying that commissioners don't know what they're doing. And I will tell you that to a person, almost every single person that I've met as a commissioner, both when I was a commissioner and after, are incredibly hardworking, sincere people that are trying to get this stuff right. They're incredibly curious. They want to learn. They listen to it. They try to educate themselves, and they are as diligent as they can be. And some of the people that didn't have a clue turn out to be some of the best commissioners because they dive into it and they are really trying to do the right thing for the states.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. So and you bring up an interesting thought, Kevin. I hadn't really thought about this before, but from the standpoint of a lot of commissioners being sort of political animals, how, as utilities, should we be thinking about that today and approaching that?
I'll tell you the biggest piece of advice that I give to people, even in my own organization, is that commissioners are people. Mm-hmm. I mean, you sometimes tend to think of them as these kind of nameless entities, or that a technical argument is going to get them. But they are human beings that have their own biases, both good and bad. They have their own perspective. And the best way to be successful with a commissioner is to build a relationship with them that is not transactional, that is genuine. Now, you don't have to like everybody, but you have to learn about them as a people. And political animals especially, that's their bread and butter. It's about connecting with people on some level. And you can't treat commissioners differently because you think that they are in some sort of different realm. They do act as judges, they do act as legislators, quasi on both, but they're just normal people, and sometimes we talk to them like they're not normal people, or we think that it has to be business 100% of the time, and that's just not true. That's not how you interact with other people. You can talk about work a little bit, but you also talk about their kids and talk about what they like and what foods they like and what trips they've taken. And all of that helps you connect with them on a genuine level, and makes them want to connect with you and makes them want to listen to you. The best position that we can be in, I think, as utility folks, is as trusted advisors to these commissions, which means we have credibility in front of them. So when we say something, they believe us. That's like the gold standard. And you do that not by treating them as somebody untouchable. You do that by getting to know them and having them build that trust relationship, just like in any relationship.
Yeah, I think I would add, to the point about them being human, commissioners are human, and I think that it would be kind of forgetful to remember that, they too have political motivations, that drive kind of what they think and, perhaps why they were put there and what their expertise is. And so I would say it would be kind of a misnomer to pretend that isn't part of being a human. I'm not saying that is how all commissioners vote or think, but it is a natural inclination. I talked earlier about, sort of this finality, if you will, to some of these appointments. And so it's a natural tendency. The other thing too, I would say, having been a commissioner, I think you guys would agree too, is the way votes are assembled, ideally a commission is a unanimous voting creature. And so there's a lot of work behind that getting to a yes or getting to a no. It may not be ultimately the ideal outcome for one or more commissioners, but there's no in between. It's either a yes or no.
Yeah.
I say this to my folks too. I say, for a lot of people, especially in our business, they're engineers, they're linear thinkers. 1 + 1 = 2. There's a lot of math problems. I said sometimes for commissioners, 1 + 1 = dog. And I know that sounds irrational, but they are getting pressure from their governors. They are getting newspaper stories written about them. And as affordability and as all of this stuff becomes more at the forefront, forever, public service commissioners were anonymous. But then something happens in your state, and we've seen it. It happens in cycles, that there always seems to be in the state. For a while, it was here in Florida. Connecticut, we were just talking about. And then you become on the forefront, and people start asking you questions. And that creates sometimes a non-rational response or non-linear response. And we may not always understand it, but it also may be the best way forward for that particular commission or that particular commissioner. And so you have to take that into account. As Marie said, I think that's a perfect way of saying it, is they have their own calculations that you have to pick up on and take into account.
Yeah, I agree completely. I tell my team all the time, part of our job as the utility is to educate. Educate commissioners, educate their staff, educate consumer advocates, because a lot of them are in the same boat that we were, right? Brand new, don't know it, don't understand it, They've got one side telling them one thing, another side telling them another. And so, yeah, education, I think, is a key component to that.
Absolutely.
Another thing you bring up, Kevin, is just kind of the change and looking at the different complexities. I feel, and I'd be interested in your thoughts, the role of the commissioner has changed dramatically. There is so much more being thrown on them. So much. It's now environmental. It's affordability. And affordability was always there, but looking at just and reasonable rates, I think that was kind of what we focused on, right? Just and reasonable economic regulators. That role has expanded dramatically, whether it's supposed to or not from a legal standpoint. It has, because of pressures, outside pressures. Thinking about that, would you prefer to be a commissioner when you were a commissioner, or would you want to be a commissioner today? Which time period?
I mean, I would say, I'm very pleased with the time that I had in front of the commission. I would agree with you. I think today is much more complex. Candidly, I think some of it is brought upon the commissions themselves. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. I'll give you examples. I mean, there's endless workshops on workshops where anybody and everybody has a say, and then it's nobody at the same time. It's like, so what are we doing? There's this endless need to please everyone and everything on every topic and every analysis till Sunday. And so I would say I definitely enjoyed my time then. I feel like I still got a chance to shape and influence policy, and today now I sort of look at it as more execution of that.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm kind of an egomaniac, so I think I could do any better than anybody as it is right now. But
we all are at some point.
I mean, come on, right? We can all do a great job now.
I know the
if only you were in
so-
charge of the ICC, things would be running perfectly in Illinois. I was fortunate to be, and was way before you guys, oh man. But I was at the time when renewables were just starting to get going. So we had these renewable portfolio standards that were coming in. We wrote the rules for that. And that was something that was just kind of getting started. But that, compared to what we're dealing with today, is peanuts.
Yeah.
With the technology that's coming in, with even the advent of demand response and smart thermostats, and if you guys did the Itron experience, understanding what AI can do, and all the different things that make this job more effective and make it easier, but cost money, and forces you to make decisions on where you're going to invest. And so I think today the volume of issues in each individual sector, gas, water, electric, have really grown exponentially. And so I think it would be a really fun time to be a commissioner right now. But there's heightened scrutiny. You like, when I was a commissioner, people would be like, is that a full-time job? I was like, really? What's the Public Service Commission? Because people didn't know what it did.
Yeah.
And that's becoming less true today, especially as you're dealing with it. I also was regulating at a time when we went through the economic downturn. 2008, you had the crash and the housing crisis, and so we were dealing with affordability and having rate cases come in every year because people needed to do rates, and we're going to be facing that, I think, coming soon, which really is forcing legislators and commissions to fundamentally think how they operate today and whether they need to change processes. So I think would be a really fun thing to participate. We do participate. We have a great commission that keeps us involved and asks the questions. So we are participating, but being the person in the chair that's actually designing this stuff and making the decision, I think would be a blast today.
Yeah. I think it would be enjoyable as well, but I'm not sure when I got kicked out of the legislature, my wife said, I hope you never run for anything ever again. Did not like that public scrutiny. And like you, I suppose I have somewhat of an ego, because when you put your name on a ballot, you got something in you goes,
Right.
Yeah, I can do this. But that public, just that pressure is much higher today than it was at one point.
And I think the stakes of getting it wrong are higher.
Yeah.
I mean, if you get a rate wrong, okay, you can fix it in the next rate case. But when you're talking about making decisions that have impacts over 30 years, you don't want to mess it up. The stakes are, I think, a lot higher.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. Is how do we, because these decisions are they're long-term decisions. But it seems like increasingly the commissions are being forced, or at least perception is that you have to make this decision today, and you don't know what's going to happen in 30 years. And oh yeah, by the way, if you get it wrong, the whole world's going to come crashing down, and the world is going to stop spinning. So how do we help as utilities and those who are appearing before the commissions? How do we help them understand it's okay to make some of these decisions? And so here's the best information that we have today. Here's the best way to move forward that's going to be okay for everybody. And hey, if we've got the wrong rate, well, it'll be all right. We'll get through it. It's not the end of the world. The sun will come up tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, what's coming to my mind is, I mean, depending on the topic, because, you know, like you said, they're being asked to look and decide a ton of things. But as a utility, I would say the best way to assist that is, I think commissions need to understand that utilities really are in the best position to understand what the business needs are in the next 3, 5, longer term years. That's not to say we should assume that everything should get approved, you know, without any scrutiny, but I think when you start layering things on top of that, that's where it becomes a question of affordability or subsidization, or if there's even legislative pressures that they may face that mandate certain implementation. I think that can be costly, but I would say that for me, it's really educating them on what it is that the business needs today in order to be able to operate safely and effectively and reliably.
I also do government affairs, and so we're constantly reminding the legislature that the reasons why these commissions were set up 100 years ago was so you didn't have to make hard decisions, right? Because rates have to go up, you have to pay for stuff, and these are more than election cycle decisions that you have to make. So you try to tell them to, look, we appreciate your input, but you need to really think about whether you just want to give the commission the authority to do something or whether you want to specify it. And maybe you're not the best group to do that. We've got a bunch of experts in a building down the road that can do that. So that's one thing that you have to be very careful of, is having legislators decide that they're going to make all the decisions. And we've seen some, we've seen some real consequences of that in some other states where the commission actually followed what the legislature did, and then the commission got hammered by it. So that's an entity that you have to deal with. I think that one of the things you do learn as a commissioner, and I think it's particularly true for lawyers, because when you're in law school, you're taught to think about the second and third order consequences of the stuff that you're doing, right? So it's really a chess match. You're not playing checkers. You've got to think a couple moves ahead and say, okay, if that, then what? And you follow the decision tree. And I think engineers can be really good at that too, where you're, okay, you've got a cascading set of decisions, and how can you follow that? And really it's up to commissions to take the time to go through that exercise and listen to the utilities and listen to the other folks and say, what are the implications of my decisions today? And where, you know, you're planning 30 years out, and you run integrated resource plans and other things in order to help make those decisions. But it really is up to the commissions to take a step back and say, all right, what is the least risky path that we can take that does everything that we need to do, and how much risk tolerance do we have coming out? And that's when you have to rely, and I think, like I said, a vast majority of commissioners do a good job of this, of really trying to make the best decision, and sometimes agonizing over what to do. And I think generally they try to come up with the right answer that they think is the best path forward for their state. So it all comes from a good place, and then you hope that after you leave, commissions fix anything that you screw up.
Well, I appreciate that you remind legislators and legislators, because I say this all the time, look, if you want it back, you can take it back. Because in most states, there are 3, I think, that are constitutionally established commissions, but in most states, the commissions have been established by legislative intent. And so, yeah, I would say you guys can take it back if you don't like the decision they're making. To your point on hoping things don't come back and bite you, we've all got these. And every commissioner I talk to who has gone to a utility at some point says, oh yeah, no, that was probably a mistake I made at the commission, and it's haunting me now. What is that? and maybe not mistake, but what is that thing that as a commissioner you did that now today either haunts you or you're like, man, I am glad I did that?
I start hearings on November 4th to an issue that stemmed out of rulings that I made in 2011 and 2013 as a member of the commission that my company didn't like. And so I'll every time they bring it up in a meeting, I'll either apologize or I'll say, well, you guys didn't do a good enough job convincing me. So it's your fault, it's not mine. It's not the exact issue, but it stems out of the issue that we had. So I constantly worry when they'll be like, oh, the commission screwed us on that. I'll be like, was I on that order? Like there's probably a pretty good chance that I did. You own it. I mean, look, someone asked you in a question about what you regret at lunch today. I think you answered it right. I think regret is a wasted emotion, right? I mean, it's just, now I'm Irish Catholic, so the guilt is overwhelming, but the regret piece is not quite there. But I sleep well at night thinking, because I think that I made the best decision that I could have made at the time, understanding that there was horse trading going on.
Yep.
Yes.
I had 5 commissioners on my commission. I needed 3 votes to get anything done. And for good regulation, you want at least 4, and you want it to be unanimous. So you've got to craft an order. And if you're dealing with a rate case, you may have 30 issues, and not everybody agrees on the stuff. So you have to figure out a way, and as chair, I think it's partially your responsibility, I think it's all your responsibility, to craft that order in a way that gets you the best result with all the things that you have. That doesn't mean you win on everything, it doesn't mean you get everything you want, but it's a balanced order. And if you do your job right, everybody's equally unhappy with you, so it's fine. So I think that kind of, I don't look back and say, that's an order I wish I could take back, or that's an order that I think I'm messed up on. May be delusional, but it's not something I look back on, because I really do think that the commission as a whole, and there are plenty of guardrails, so you have other people on the commission that are talking to you and helping you out and saying this is the right path forward. So it can really be a regret-free experience if you just say, hey, look, I did the best I could at the time with the information I had.
I would also add, I mean, just generally speaking, and maybe this is the lawyer in me, but I would caution about admitting you made the wrong vote or something. I mean, I don't know, that's good to say, but no, truthfully, I agree with you on balance that, there's nothing I regret there. I think there's always learning lessons, and I would say the one big takeaway is always just learning how to get better in the negotiation process and collaborating across offices, because like Kevin said, that there's a lot going on behind the scenes that folks don't see, and there's a little bit of a finesse and an art to how you get the deal done, as they say, so. Yeah.
Be thinking of your questions. I'm going to go to your questions next, but I'm going to answer my own question because that's my prerogative as moderator. The one, there are many for me, I will tell you that. The one that sticks in my mind, and I agree with you, Kevin, regret is not worth, right? You can wish you had a different decision or, whatever it might be. But for me, it was a situation where we had a nuclear plant that it was an independent power producer. The utility had a contract with them, but they were going to end that contract early and go out and get the renewable contracts. It was going to save customers some money over the long run. And it was a decision that I really struggled with, and I had to go back to, I'm not an attorney, I just tell people I played one for 7.5 years on the commission. But I had to go back and look at what does the law say. The law says, as an economic regulator, that it was going to save customers money, it wasn't going to hurt reliability, it wasn't going to do anything. But in the back of my mind, I knew we're gonna need this plant someday. And here we are, 5-ish years later, actually a little over 5 years later, and they're looking at restarting that plant.
I think they announced today they're doing it.
Yeah, and so that was one of those at the time where I'm like, I hate this decision, hate it. But it's the decision I have to make from a legal standpoint. I was one of the biggest proponents of like, yes, start that back up so I can at least get rid of that guilt.
right, wipe it free.
All right, we got a question over here.
I don't think it's on.
Yep, I don't think it's.
There we go.
How about now? There we go.
Yeah.
All right, so you guys are on the other side of the fence now. You're seeing demand for your products increasing dramatically year over year with data centers, EVs. How do you get the commissions to buy into trying to improve the turnaround on increasing supply, driving the cost down, building infrastructure to support that? Because this is going to go on for the next few years. So how do we increase the ability to improve the infrastructure?
Well, first of all, Peoples Gas and North Shore Gas, operate as gas utilities. So, candidly, I don't know that we're seeing the demand in Chicago that, the suburbs are seeing with home building, et cetera. But what I would say is, for us, the commission is certainly looking for us to be able to demonstrate how we are prioritizing all of that capital spend. I mean, we have a massive retirement program that we need to execute on, but against all of that is all of our regular capital and all of the increasing O&M. As we all know, labor has gone up. I think someone was talking about it earlier, and there's supply chain constraints, there's tariff things to consider, there's IT that needs to be implemented, as we all have talked about it at one point or another. And so I think it's really us being able to demonstrate the need for it, but in a very structured and layered way, on top of all of the other pressures the commissions have with things like affordability, LIHEAP going away, increasing arrears, and then we have some other subsidies and some pending legislation now. So I think, long story short, I think it's just really trying to prioritize the capital in a persuasive way over a certain period of time is, I think, what they're expecting to see.
We're lucky in that our commission has pushed us to do more dispatchable energy, more steel on the ground, rather than relying on the SPP market. But this is where it really is a math problem, where you demonstrate based on your demand in your integrated resource planning when you're going to be short of capacity and that you need to build. And if you look at the capacity markets, you used to be able to go out and just say, oh, there's plenty available. With demand going up throughout the entire footprint, you can't go out and acquire that. You've got to build. We are in a build cycle. There's no question about it. Even if you pull data centers out of that, based on onshoring, supply chain issues, you're seeing load growth. And many utilities are like Evergy that are finding themselves a little short of capacity and needing to build. And so that's where you just have to be straight up and say, we're in a build cycle. Here is our demand. And if you want to be competitive as a state, if you want to be in the conversation for economic development, the number one question people ask is, do you have the energy to supply us? It used to be workforce. Now it's what our people are telling us in our state is that the number one question is, do you have the ability to serve us and serve us quickly? And so we have a commission that has responded to that and has pointed to us and say, you need to build. Now, data center demand gets to the point where you're building a lot, so you have to have protections and you have to do stuff in order to and say, this is what we're doing to make sure we're not going to have stranded assets, or we're not overbuilding. But a lot of that is the math that you're showing them through an integrated resource plan and through the demonstration that the demand is real and that you need to build in order to maintain reliability of the system. And reliability and affordability are number one on commissioners' minds. It's what keeps them up at night. And if you say we're investing early now so that we can keep the system reliable but also maintain affordability for the next 30 years, they'll respond to that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a least regrets, right? Put forth a least regrets model that this is going to probably have the least impact in the long run, right? And do a good job explaining just that. Now, just real quick, you're not seeing any incomings from AI data centers for gas directly.
No, well, I should, when we talk about data centers, there's a couple things. I mean, just given sort of the geographic layout of the city, it's a little bit different. That's not to say we don't have data centers, but they're not as prevalent in our footprint as they are, say, downstate Illinois. I would also say Illinois has some pretty strict liability legislation that really disincentivizes data centers from locating in Illinois. So there's that too.
Yeah. Next question.
Hi, I think I have the opposite question as the gentleman before me. In that sense, utilities right now don't have a direct financial incentive to choose solutions that defer CapEx or even avoid CapEx. How do you see that in a situation where no doubt we're in a build cycle, no doubt it's kind of like all hands on deck, but some of these solutions might be faster, might definitely keep rates down in the short term. Do you see any evolution towards either performance-based incentives or different structure like they have, for instance, I think in the UK, where CapEx and OpEx are mixed, and where as long as utility can justify in that envelope what they do, they can have any mix of CapEx and OpEx?
We actually do have some efficiency legislation in Missouri that will compensate us for efficiency programs. It's kind of a three-legged stool, so you're avoiding the investment. You treat supply side as the same as demand side. So there are some of that incentives, but I will tell you that what we're seeing now is the demand is so big for our system. We're a 15 gig system. At our peak, we're at about 11 or 12 from the energy side. We have 15 gigs worth of projects at various stages of development in our queue. Majority of them are data centers, but they're not all data centers. We just opened up an advanced manufacturing plant in Kansas that makes batteries. It's a Panasonic plant, 4,000 jobs, advanced manufacturing plant. So what that forces you to do, and all of them want speed to market. Yeah. So what forces you to do, if you want to serve those people and get them in, is you have to look at alternative solutions. You have to look at you do your build, you do your generation builds that you need to do and take a look at it, but then you're like, okay, what are the gaps that I have? Like, I may be short in capacity in 2029. I'm good in 2030 and 31 because those gas plants are coming online. But what do I do in those gaps? So you're forced to look at other solutions. So right now, I'll tell you, we're all of the above. We're looking at everything that we can do in order to serve those customers and serve them quickly, based on their ramp rates and ramp requests. And some of them are pretty aggressive. Not all of them are real, but some of them are pretty aggressive. So right now, and we just passed a legislation that in Missouri that did kind of revise a lot of the incentives that we have to build. We had a ban on construction work in progress that got overturned. We have some other mechanisms that work. Gas and water got future test years, which they didn't have. So there are some ways to incentivize doing that, but we absolutely look at alternative solutions all the time and are looking at ways to fill those gaps, because if even, think about that. If even half of that demand comes in, you're growing your system by 50%, which is crazy. So you can't do it fast just by saying we're just going to build traditional generation, and commissioners aren't going to continually approve just building new gas plants or new types of generation. You have to have alternative solutions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just add, obviously the energy efficiency is a type of incentive mechanism, and future test years are there too. But I would say for us, on the CapEx side, we certainly are proactively looking at alternatives that may drive a cost down for us. I think that there is an expectation that we look at things like non-pipeline alternatives. It's a new exercise for a business like ours, but I think given our jurisdiction, we're very proactive about it, and I think that's one opportunity. It's not necessarily an incentive, but I do think that we are showing our math, and obviously the other alternatives, you do nothing, and you can throw a bunch of O&M after it, but eventually things come to the end of their useful life.
Right. Yeah, and I think Kevin's right. That these numbers are so large. There are not a ton of options, and some of those avoidance options will not cut it. And so you have to look at the full gamut and think about the customers that are coming to us as utilities are highly technical, into technology. They have thought of these things too. They're looking at those things as well. And it really is that all the above, and what is going to be the best, quickest, fastest approach. So we've got just 1 minute left. So very quickly, I'm not going to ask the what keeps you up at night question. I'm going to ask a little bit different flavor of that is, what gets you up in the morning?
Wow. Well, I mean, I would say for us, I think I know why I was brought in to the business, and that's really what keeps me up. I think there is a big lift ahead of us, to be very candid, and there's a lot of work to do. I was just giving someone the example that it's like trying to rebuild the car and drive it at the same time. When the commission put the pause on our infrastructure program, I can't even begin to tell you now, sitting on this side, the devastating impact it had to our workforce. There's a significant ramp up, and you better believe those vendors are baking in that risk going forward if we get shut down again. And so there is a lot on the table. There's, employee morale issues that go along with a shutdown like that and fear of being shut down again. And there's also just the need to improve our relationship, and so that's really what motivates me to wake up and keep going every day.
Yeah, look, if we get this right, I think we're at a period of time which may sound contradictory, but it's both revolutionary and evolutionary. Like the people look back on the advent of like air conditioning as a change in this, and then you look back at renewable integration in the solar and wind, and I think people are going to look back at this time and figure out how we deal with it and whether we'll be judged by whether we do this right or wrong because it's got such implications. And then the result of what you're doing with what that implications are with AI that these data centers are enabling, and you're enabling the data centers. And so I think the biggest motivation is this is a really exciting time that is fraught with peril, and so you want conscientious people that are going to get up every day and try to get it as right as they can. And I think I've mentioned it as kind of a Gordian knot to try to untie moving forward in our industry, and it's kind of fun to be part of that. That's trying to untie it before you have to cut through it and blow it all up.
Yeah, it is. I look at it and try to every day make sure I don't take what we do for granted, because what we do in this industry is provide life-critical services. When our services are not provided to you all out there, to our customers, people die, and that's a reality. And so for me, that's that piece of just what you said, Kevin. We are providing service to everybody. As a legislator, I was like, oh, I'm having a big impact. When you're at a utility or you're at the commission, you're having an impact on every single person's life on a daily basis. So go forth and do well, everybody. Appreciate everybody attending this afternoon. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed our time up here. Again, good friends, and sure we'll remain so. Appreciate you guys joining us as well. And please, everybody, join me in thanking.
Thank you.
Thank you.